Welcome to the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. I'm your host, Jacob Cooper, best-selling author of Life After Breath and the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. For those of you who are new to my channel, please consider hitting that subscribe button as well as bell notification icon to stay up to date to powerful interviews coming your way. For those of you who have been to my channel before, thank you for coming by. Today's guest in the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder is Samantha Fay. Samantha is a brilliant author, spiritual teacher, and intuitive, and she's going to be providing a lot of her own intuitive insights from her personal and professional experience to help guide us and help navigate, our path forward as we go into this new upcoming season and new year. So without further ado, we bring on Samantha Fay as an honored guest in the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. Samantha Fay, it is such an honor to have you here as my guest in the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. I'm so excited to talk to you as well as sharing your new book, Heavenly Alliance, wrong way, this way, which I was honored to endorse. But you're someone who I certainly been honored to be on your podcast a couple of times and someone who's making the rounds certainly. But for my viewers who haven't really heard of Samantha Fay, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and how you came into being, if that's possible to cover, over maybe a 45 to hour long segment here? I know that's a task at hand.
Well, thanks for having me on the show. I'm a huge fan of you as well, as you know. Okay, so who I am in 10 seconds or less. Let's see. I think I would always describe myself as someone who spent her whole life trying to be normal and fit in and go along to get along. And I always pushed down my intuition. I always pushed down what I considered that weird, strange side of myself.
Mm.
And I had a pretty profound spiritual awakening in my late 20s, early 30s. Started with finding a crystal, which led to Reiki, which led to my intuition really popping back open. And that presented itself to me as precognitive dreams that kept coming true. And I had this recurring dream that my husband at the time, who was a police officer, was going to be shot in the neck in the
Oh my
line of
God.
duty. I just had this
Wow.
dream over and over. It was just a bullet impacting a neck. It was very brutal. It was very quick. And, him being a strong, tough cop was like, I'll be fine. I'll be fine. And then about a month later, unfortunately, that did happen. He was injured in the neck and he did survive, but was it was a long road to survival. Let me put it lightly that way. And the whole time my family and I were in the ICU waiting room, my sisters and my friends kept saying, "Gosh, Samantha, you dreamt this. You dreamt this." And it made me feel like I could have done something to prevent it if I hadn't spent my whole life pushing down my intuition. So as a good Catholic girl, I was filled with shame and guilt, and so I went into the hospital chapel, and I just got on my knees, and I said, "God, if I'm supposed to do something with this, I surrender it all to you. Just let the father of my kids come home."
Mm.
And, as God does, he kept up her side of the bargain, and so I kept up mine, and I joined an intuitive development circle. And, long story short, I ended up leaving my teaching career and started doing, readings full time and met some amazing people, had some fantastic experiences. My friend Deb was also a college teacher, and we really bonded because we were both intuitives who were also very educated and grounded and intelligent people, and we wanted to meet people like us. So we started our podcast, Psychic Teachers, 14 years ago, which is crazy to think about. And so I've just been doing that for years and teaching and writing about all of that. I think my goal, Jacob, is to normalize this so that anyone out there who felt like I did, like they will be ostracized or judged or condemned or just laughed at for believing in crystals and tarot and intuitive abilities. I want everyone to know that there's more of us out there than you think.
Wow. Wow. And it seems in a way that life prepares us to do things in a bigger, macrocosm. and your role as a teacher and everything that you did in a way prepared you for that role, but also the capacity to have empathy where maybe someone who's a couple of exits, where you moved on from, you're able to really be cognizant and understanding as to where their vantage point is. But no, it's amazing the work that you're doing. I just made a post the other day, I think it was yesterday, how when you're tuned in, the paranormal becomes the normal. And that seems to be the trajectory that you're on. What are some of the barriers that you've learned to overcome, and how to, someone, maybe who's like a younger Samantha, brought up, maybe a religious environment, all this information, how do we get beyond, our information? How do we get beyond the beliefs that we've been fed for so long? Um,
I think that's an ongoing process, and I'll be honest, I still deal with it from time to time. I really, really do, because there's a part of me that wishes I could just go to church on Sunday and not question everything, but unfortunately, I always tell God, "You created me, and you created me with this, inquisitive mind, so this is what you get." But what's helped me the most is just really and truly surrendering who I am, what I am, and what my possibilities are to my idea of a higher power. And I don't have one view of what that higher power is. I'm very, very open-minded. And I think that when we have that attitude of surrender, of just use my gifts, use my talents, use my abilities, use whatever you put into me when you created me to do your will. When you have that attitude of surrender, I think you're just automatically led in the right way that you're supposed to go. And the other thing I've learned about intuition is that it is so subtle. It's not
mm,
loud. Our ego is loud. Our fears are loud. Our worries are screaming at us. But our intuition is very quiet and very subtle. And so, one of the things I talk about a lot in Heavenly Alliance is how to understand that subtle language, the way that the universe, our subconscious, our intuition is speaking to us. What helped me a lot, I started a validation journal in
mm,
about 2006. And I just started writing. I wrote down my dreams, of course, I still do that, but I would write down little, like, nudges and thoughts I was getting about myself or people in my life, and then when those later came to pass, I would write that down so that when I had those moments of doubt, I could flip back to that validation journal and go, "Oh my gosh, you knew this." I
mm,
also started trusting myself. And I know that might sound simplistic, but it's really not. We're so used to going to people for advice. We see a doctor for health advice or a therapist for mental advice. We talk to our friends when we're complaining about our job. But I started to go within and really trust myself and listen to those little nudges I was getting. And it was amazing because I started trusting myself in small ways. Like if I kept getting, I remember one time I kept getting this idea to call a friend I hadn't spoken to in like 7 years, and I was like, "Why is she popping into my head?" And finally, I just followed through with it, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you called. I just started getting into crystals, and I have no one to talk to about
wow.
this." And I was like, "Oh, I'm your girl." So it wasn't like, mind-blowing stuff, like,
Mhm,
"This is what you're supposed to do next, and on June 3rd, you're going to be here." It was subtle, everyday little steps I was taking that proved to myself, and I hope to my guides and angels, that I was trusting myself, I was trusting the guidance, and brick by brick, layer by layer, I started building on that intuitive ability.
mm,
When I started doing readings, that was terrifying, absolutely terrifying.
mm,
I really admire these people I see on TV and stage who just get up there. I was always very, very afraid to
mm,
do all of that. So I offered, free readings for a year.
wow,
And if anyone is thinking about getting out into this world in a professional manner, I cannot recommend that enough, because having that pressure off
mm,
of, I've scheduled this, I took a day off work to see you, I'm paying for this, having that pressure off and just telling people, look, I'm new at this, I'm learning. It's not costing you anything but an hour of your time. Help me help you, vice versa. That helped open me up tremendously.
it seems from what you're saying is when it was light to you, when there wasn't so much pressure on yourself, that's when your ability to serve others and to tune into others was a lot more heightened, and then that muscle continuously grew through that. where it wasn't so intense or forced or pressured. It was something that happened within time, and you developed, a nice foundational muscle, to utilize for yourself and others.
Yeah, and I did it very, very slowly, and I always remind myself, and I try to teach my students this as well, of 2 things. 1, I do not believe I have a gift. I don't believe any of us who are out there with our intuition, I don't think any of us are gifted. I just don't believe that. I think it's a natural muscle.
Mm,
And, for some people, we come into this world with it a little bit stronger than others, just like some people come into this world and they can, run a marathon a hell of a lot easier than I can, right? But every one of us has that ability. And if we choose to strengthen it and expand it, we can. But there's nothing special about being intuitive. It
mm,
is it is something that all of us have. And I'm so passionate, if you can't tell, about teaching people how to embrace that intuition within themselves. I think it's our inner compass. I think it will never lead us astray. And I think if more people, even the math and science people, the agnostic, the atheist, because I don't think intuition is anything really to do with spirituality or faith. I think it really is a sixth sense that is natural, that has been suppressed in us for centuries
mm,
for a variety of reasons. The other thing I always teach my students and I tell myself is I am just a mailman. I am just a delivery person. That's it. So things come through me, not from me. And so when I take that special, like, oh, you're special, you're gifted, or you can do this, when I take that off, you're right, it is taking the pressure off. But it's also a very important reminder, I think, that we are just the messenger to be like the straw. Let it just flow through you.
mm. So you're not attached yourself to the message itself. You're just a conduit, and the ego gets, we just kind of like get out of our own way and understand this is a natural flow that we all have. Much like someone who has a monopolization on breathing and air. It's like we all can do it. It's just some people are cognizant of what we're doing, and aware of it. So, I absolutely love that. Would you say this muscle of intuition is more towards the individual, or is it something that we're supposed to more so give over to others? Is more of like a percentage on the self, or is it something that we're here to use towards other people? I'm just wondering the ratio of how much of it is for ourselves and how much of it is for someone else.
I think most of it is for ourselves.
Mm,
I think we are so focused on, well, people like us who are on the spiritual path. I think we're very focused on giving, 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 and I think that's beautiful and wonderful. But I do think that intuition is for us. I think it's the only way our guides, our angels, our loved ones who have gone before us, our higher self can speak to us.
mhm,
And so if we tune that intuition out, it's very easy for us to get off our plan, to get off our path,
mhm,
to walk away from what our true soul purpose is. And so I think it's crucial for us to stay in touch with that intuition. And if you listen to people, people use different words for it, I got a gut sense, I got a bad feeling. They don't say intuition. They don't say empathic, right? But
right,
but if you listen to people's words, I think most people are listening to their intuition
mhm,
most of the time. Just, I think we need to be doing it more. And I'm concerned, personally and globally, at how distracted we are.
mm,
If you look at societies that don't have all the distractions that we have, they do tend to be more in tuned
mhm,
with their true self, their inner purpose, their inner
mhm,
compass. I look at the works of literature and poetry that were written before TikTok and the internet and, all of this stuff, and I'm not seeing the same. Even the movies that are coming out, they're all repeats and reruns of stuff that's
mm,
already been created. I think that when we're so distracted and pulled in all these different directions and we don't give ourselves a moment to breathe, a moment to exhale, a moment to
mm,
just pause and say, "Jacob, how are you doing today?" When we don't just tune into ourselves, our heart, we block out all that beautiful inspiration that's trying to come to us.
mm. So true. And while social media and the internet has a capacity to reach masses, and they are seeing like, younger people who are intuitive of, they understand intuition. They know about this stuff. It's more mass spread. While at the same time, there's a blockage of an organic flow of connectivity. that happens when society becomes so trendy and so regurgitated that we're not adding anything unique. We're just kind of like a leaf in the water of whatever the algorithm, is. And so as a society, we've become very much stripped away of our, organic connection to flow. And it seems like that's what intuition is. It's something that's been, there for thousands upon thousands of years. It's a natural muscle. But we've gotten away from that with so much distraction, living in, this degree of the box. And you mentioned it's something that's subtle, which I agree with. I think there's a lot of movies which I love, such as Ghost with Demi Moore and Patrick Swayze, but it's not kind of like Patrick Swayze going up to Whoopi Goldberg and just, there talking. It's more of a subtlety. Yeah, in a world that, is loud and in your face and everything can be tangibilized, how could people familiarize themselves with this subtle voice and to trust it? How did they get to that level?
Yeah, it's not easy, like anything that's worthwhile, it's not an easy process. I wish I could tell you, if you just say this mantra 10 times a day, your intuition will turn on like a light switch. It's not like that. I do think it's unique for individual, but of course, it does start with just taking time to tune in and get to know yourself and be comfortable with your own silence. I do, yoga about 4 or 5 times a week, and there's always 1 or 2 new people who come in, and the last, 5 to 10 minutes of any yoga class, you're in shavasana, it's corpse pose, and you're just supposed to lay there silently and be with yourself. And there's always 1 or 2 people in the class who can't do it, and they roll up their mat and they scurry away. And I think if we're honest, I think a lot of us feel like that a lot of the time, where we don't want to be with ourselves. We don't want to be alone with our thoughts. We always have, AirPods in our ears, or we're talking on the phone, or we're scrolling through social media, or we're working, or exercising, or what have you. We keep busy. And I think the more you can focus on carving out some time, whether it's 20 minutes, 30 minutes, even 5 minutes to start with, where you're just alone with yourself and your thoughts. And you don't have to sit there and sit in the lotus position and om. You can go for a walk with yourself. You can knit or crochet. You can do woodworking, baking, anything that just quiets your mind, that quiets your overactive thinking self and allows you to focus on you, and getting to know who you are is going to be very, very helpful.
Hmm.
Now, we always hear with any relationship, what you give in is what you get out, right? What you put into that relationship is what you get out. It's the same with our intuition, with connecting to our guides and angels. If you solicit their help and their intervention, you're going to get it much more clearly, because we live under this law of free will. So we need to ask for help. The universe is speaking to us all the time through signs. So pay attention to any recurring repetitive signs that you are seeing. It could be a hawk that you see, or a cardinal, or a butterfly. It could be a song that you hear all the time. You know, um, I have a friend who was on the dating apps for a while, and every time she'd get back in her car from a not so good date, she'd put on the radio or Spotify, and "You Too Still Haven't Found What I Was Looking For" would come on, and she was like, "Oh, I think the universe is trying to tell me something," like that wasn't my person. So there's subtle, subtle signs like that, but it's often signs in nature, or music, or repetitive thoughts. I think when we pay attention to our dreams, we can get a lot of messages from our subconscious that way. When we're asleep, our mind is at rest, our body is at rest, but our soul never has to sleep or
Mhm.
rest or recharge. And so that's an opportunity for our subconscious to really speak to our soul. So there's a lot of different things that you can do, but anything you do that feels like a ritual to you, like if you get up every day and you pull card, or you write for 5 minutes in your journal, or you do the artist way, the morning pages, if you walk your dog, anything you do that's a ritual that you can do alone and with silence, where you're just kind of befriending yourself. Do you know what I mean? Like really getting to know who you are without all the distractions and the noise. That's going to do a lot to help you pay attention to the subtle signs of the universe.
So true. And I think there's almost like this climactical expectation for when you're connecting to spirit, like we said before, and things to just explode in front of you. But like you said, very much it's really about being awareness and not glossing over as the things that we view as small are the things that are really quantum, and being mindful, being aware. And it's just amazing how much people miss out, on these obvious signs when they're not paying attention. They just kind of hit them square in the face that they're, not. And I don't know, maybe it's more of a guy thing. I don't know, but sometimes people could just have their blinders on and like, they're trying to show us all these signs and it's pointedly obvious. And we're just kind of like gloss over it. It's just like, you know, I remember like my grandmother passed away and I was at my house on Friday night and I just get into my car and I put on Spotify because music helps me kind of go through my own emotions. And all of a sudden on Spotify, on the playlist they had right on my phone, it said Grandma's Home. And I'm like, what more do you need? And I know for so many people, we have these obvious signs like, what more could you possibly need? The chances of that happening at that moment, it's never happened before. And it's just like 0.00001% of that particular sign happening at that moment. It's never happened once before. So yeah, do look out for your signs. I love that you mentioned that.
Can I add a story to that though? Because I am like the quintessential doubter, right?
Mhm.
And so I've gotten signs like that. And then I've been like, well, that
Mm,
could be a coincidence. So I always tell people, I think it's okay to test the signs and ask for more. Now, I don't mean like, you know, I've heard from people who've lost loved ones and they ask for a sign every day. That's not healthy or productive.
mm,
And it's not going to help your loved one on the other side because they have work to do. They're busy over there as well. They have to
mm,
acclimate to a whole new way of being on the other side. But if you get one side, I do think it's okay to ask for another.
mm,
When I was contemplating leaving my teaching career and doing this type of work full time, I was terrified. I had three little kids. I was the main provider for my family because my ex-husband was still recovering from his brain injury, and so to even consider leaving my career and my benefits and all of that was just insurmountable and insane, and yet I kept being led to do that. So I was walking home from my neighborhood book club one night and I said, okay, God, if I'm supposed to do this, I need a sign.
mm,
And I turned into my street, and, right above my house, I see a shooting star, and I've never seen a shooting star before.
mm,
And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I think I'm leaving my job." By the time I got in the house, I was like, "Wait a minute, Samantha. Millions of people all over the world saw that shooting star. Like,
mm,
who do you think you are thinking that's for you? You know?
mm,
Come on." So I completely doubted it. And so the next day I went to work and I come home and my good friend and I, we walk every day after work. And so I said, all right, God guides angels. If I'm supposed to do this work, I need a sign that's just for me. And so we're going on our walk and a white feather just
mm,
rockets down and lands right in my palm.
mm.
And I still have that feather right in a bowl next to that crystal that I found on my desk years ago that started all of this.
Mhm,
I think it's just a good reminder that you can ask for those signs again. When my mom died, a year ago September, and we were like, "Mom, we need a sign that you're okay,"
mm,
because she was very, very scared to pass. And so we were like, "Mom, you gotta give us a sign. You gotta give us a sign." And the next day, my sisters and I, we do Wordle every day. And my mom's name was Carol with an E, but the Wordle of the day was Carol,
mm,
Carol. And we were like, "Oh my gosh, that's fantastic." I
mm,
still ask her for signs, not all the time, but just once in a while, just once in a while. I'll say, "Mom, give me a sign," especially on her birthday. So I think it's okay to get a sign, but then
mm,
test it or ask for another, to
mm.
qualify it. But I don't think that we should constantly be using only signs to navigate our way. There's a balance, I guess, is my long-winded way of trying to say that.
mm. Absolutely. I mean, I think for some of us, we have to just kind of think like some people say cardinals are immediate signs, but what about people live in other parts of the world without even a cardinal there? I mean, some animals are just natural inhabitants, and we might be looking for things because we're feeling, just at a loss or desperate. And these things are around us all the time, just don't pay attention to it. So I think you make a great point where it's like, you get it at one level, but like, all right, universe, like, show me something else. Like it's okay to ask for more. Don't be afraid of being greedy with signs. But like you said, that's just a way of like waving hello. But there's deeper levels to intuition beyond what comes to you immediately. Now you also referenced a lot of things on a deeper level, such as angels. Um, I wanted to talk about angels more on a global as well as a micro level for yourself. Um, are angels, beings that people, could regularly communicate? Do you regularly communicate with them? And if so, like, what are some of the angelic forces that we could connect to? Is it spirit guides, guardian angels, archangels? You hear all this stuff kind of thrown around in, the new age kind of community. I'm just kind of wondering types of ways that people could understand and learn how to communicate, with angels. And I know you're someone who experiences this, but you're also a wonderful educator that could speak to this in a great level with your vantage point.
Yeah, I definitely think that we can connect with our angels on a daily basis. I think we all have at least one guardian angel. I think that we also have access to the archangels who can help
Mm,
us as well. And I believe that this is really important to solicit the help from your guardian angel. But again, it has to go back to your personality. And so for me, and again, maybe it's because I was raised Catholic, I don't want to bug the angels. I always feel a little intimidated by angels, and I always feel like they're very busy. There's a lot going on in the world right now. Why do they have to deal with me and my problem with my washer and dryer? Right? You know what I'm saying? Like, so I always go to my guides because I feel like my guides have appeared to me in my dreams many, many times. They feel very tangible to me. I know that they've lived human lives. I know that they understand what it is to have a body, to be tired, to be worried, to be stressed about a job or a bill, a child that you're worried about, a health issue. So, my personality, I resonate more strongly with spirit guides. Now, when I'm going through something really traumatic and scary, I always go to the angels. So,
mm,
for example, when I was having those dreams of my ex husband being shot in the neck, I bought him an Archangel Michael medallion. Archangel Michael is the patron saint of police officers. So
mm,
I bought him, I had it monogrammed with his name. I had our priest bless it. I made him wear it every day.
mm,
And when he was shot in the neck, the nurse came out to me in the waiting room and she handed me his wedding ring and that necklace, and both were covered in dried blood.
mm,
And I was hysterical and angry, and I started raging at Archangel Michael in my head. I was like, "I've always believed in you. I've always" we in my church, we have a whole day, after Halloween devoted to the angels, and I always do something special for them on that day, and I'm like, "I've been a good steward, and I don't understand why this is happening," and
mm,
so, I just had to go for a walk by my I just walked. I was so
mm,
mad, I just walked away. And my older sister was standing out in the, corridor, and a nurse came up and said, "Who's related to the Faye family?" And my sister said, "I am. I'm his sister-in-law." And she said, "I have to talk to someone about what happened in there." And she said the nurse said, "I used to be very, very faithful, but I lost all of that years ago." And she said, "I'm embarrassed to say this, but I actually thought as a healer that I had a special connection to Archangel Michael."
mm,
And she said, "We were working on him in the OR, and he kept coding." And she said, "I could feel the doctors kinda giving up and getting ready to call it." And she said, "For some reason, I called on Archangel Michael." And
mm,
you'd think, like, Archangel Raphael is the angel of healing, so I don't know why, but she called on Archangel Michael. That's who she said she had a connection to when she was little. And she said that she heard a voice in her head say, "Touch his forehead."
mm,
And she said she did, and they got a heartbeat, and he never coded again. And I thought, how weird that there 5 minutes before, I'm looking at this bloody necklace of Archangel Michael, and I'm screaming at him in my head, like, "Where were you?" You know? And then
yeah,
5 minutes later, this nurse comes and tells my
mm,
sister that story. It's like he was saying, "I was right there, sister friend, calm down," you know?
mm,
So, when we are in those moments, I do think our angels are with us. Um, 10, 12, well, actually 12 years ago now, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I'm,
mm,
happy to say I'm completely fine, but obviously it was a terrifying, time for me. And the night before my surgery, I had a dream that I was walking with my angel. Now, I didn't see her. I was just walking down this beach, and I could feel her presence next to me, and I could feel her hand in mine, but I couldn't see her. I've never seen an angel. I can feel their energy, and it's
mm,
very different. It's very light. It's pure love. There's no judgment in it. It's almost overwhelming. And we were just walking, and I don't remember what she was saying to me, but when I woke up, I had in my like, almost like on a movie screen in the back of my forehead and went with my eyes closed, and it said Isaiah 41, and I looked it up, and it was a passage in the Bible that says, "Do not be afraid, I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." And I knew she was just trying to tell me that this surgery is gonna go well, you're gonna recover from this, and it's gonna be in your rearview mirror before you know it, and she was right. So
Mm.
I always go to the angels when I'm at those fall to my knees moments, and I go to my guides for the daily stuff.
I see. Yes, yes. Well, thank God you've experienced so many miracles to you individually, and to your ex-husband in those moments, but just, reminds us of the power of asking and just connecting and conversing, to really be able to see past where we just feel like this is it, this is finite, this is misery, there's nothing else, and there's a path forward. I'm sure you get asked this all the time, but how much does intuition play in a role with, maybe, let's say, exit points or destiny or things that are just going to happen no matter what? And how much of it is free? How much of intuition is based on free will, where we have the power to really maybe save someone or do something differently, or how much is just kind of out of our hands, where we know of things that are going to happen no matter what we do? Is it just kind of like signed, sealed, and delivered, and we're just kind of trapped there?
Well, that's kind of the whole point of my book because
Mhm.
I feel that some things in our life are destined
Mhm.
and they're going to happen no matter what. And we might not understand why those things have to happen, right? Like when my ex-husband was shot in the line of duty, it changed our entire lives.
Mhm.
No one in that family has ever been the same since. Anyone who's had to deal with a brain injury will know how traumatizing and difficult that is for
Mhm.
that person, but also for the whole family. When I had breast cancer, completely changed my life, super, super scary. So you'll have those destined moments that are supposed to happen, and you might what I feel is a worry for me with people walking this earth is they have these negative destined moments, and that's when they lose faith.
Mm.
And again, I'm not talking about God and a church and a religion. I mean faith, like faith in
Mhm.
you, faith in this beautiful world we live in, faith in a positive future. And they tend to just walk away from all that hope and joy that's waiting for them. And they
Mhm.
just kind of, in a way, stop living. They just kind
Mhm.
of get through life rather than soar through life. And so I really wanted to write the book to explain, like, some things are supposed to happen in our lives, and you can recognize those destined moments because it's almost like no matter what you did, that it was gonna happen. You
Mhm.
can't see it in the moment, but hindsight, you can usually say, "Oh, yeah, like, that was everything led up to that moment." Those moments are kinda set in stone. I believe that we co-created them with our team of guides and angels before we come to Earth. I think we put them into our soul plan because they do teach us, they do help us to grow so much in resiliency and independence and strength and personal empowerment. Free will comes into play 80% of the other time of our
Mhm.
life, right? But in those destined moments, we still have free will in how we respond to it,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
Like, if we go back to my ex-husband, I remember when he finally did wake up from the coma, the
Mhm.
news people said to him, "How do you feel? Do you hate the man who shot you?" And he said, "No, I had a job to do and he had a
Mhm.
job to do. We were both just doing our jobs." And I thought,
Wow.
what a great way to respond to such a traumatic event, you know?
Wow.
So how you respond to events, I think, is everything.
Mm.
That's our free will. You can take an awful event. I was going to swear, I didn't. You can
That's okay.
you can take a terrible event and you can I've seen people wear it like a flag of honor around them. "Look at me,
Wow.
look what's happened to me." And it embodies them and becomes their story, and they kind of, I don't know, they get bitter or they play the victim card too much. We
Mhm.
can all do that, but what is it
Mhm.
serving you?
Right.
If we take these traumatic, terrible events and instead we say, "Okay, how can I use this to grow? How can I use this to get closer to myself? What can I learn from this?" And then once you get through that stage, how can I help other people learn to get
Mm,
through this and grow through this and thrive through this. That's where our free will and our power really lies, is in how we respond to it. Now, I
mhm,
think other things in our life are destiny that are positive and absolutely wonderful. And I think you can, again, look back on those and see how your life led up to those beautiful events of meeting your true love, or knowing this is the time to switch careers, or yes, I need to be in that exact moment to get that perfect offer.
mm,
So there's great moments of destiny as well.
mhm. Yeah. Like you said before, not everything that we view as bad is something negative. Sometimes if we just kind of ride it out, we could be able to see the intelligence behind that adversity that we went through and how that was pivotal as a shakeup period of our lives for change, much as you experienced in those traumatic moments. It seemed like that, was a big, pivotal moment that shook up your life. So it seems like for what you're saying, a lot of it comes down to trust, which allows us to see things beyond the surface and to understand the soft landing, no matter what it is that we're facing, the intelligence behind all things, just presented on the surface.
But wait, I don't wanna come off like I responded to all those events with total trust and hope and faith,
Sure.
okay? I was angry and pissed and upset
Mhm,
and raging, and I think it's really important to honor all of those
mhm,
emotions. I just see too many people getting stuck in those negative
mhm,
emotions for way too long, you know? And so I think, again, it goes back to balance. I don't think
mhm,
that I've seen other people who are super, what do we call it now? Spiritual bypassing, where
mhm,
something awful will happen and they'll go, "It's gonna be okay. This is God's will. Everything's
yeah,
wonderful. Everything's working out in my favor." That's great, but the stages of grief. It's the
mhm,
same. That doesn't apply just to death and dying. I think it applies
mhm.
to anything that is dying in our life,
Wow.
whether it's our health at that moment, whether it's our relationship, whether it's
Mhm,
our job. We have to go through those stages of grief, and anger is one of them, and I think anger is a healthy emotion. We just have to learn how to move through it.
yeah. Well, it doesn't have to be just one way. Two things, what you're saying, like two things could be true at the same time. You could vacillate, with this higher awareness, but it's important to be human and go through that. That is a big part of our healing and our growth in our ability to understand other people, and to walk the path. So absolutely. I love what you're saying. But yeah, just a quick question before we get into your incredible book. Regarding spirit guides, this is something that I'm asked a lot. I'm just kind of curious to pick your experience, or your insight. Spirit guides, do you feel that we might have had past lives with our spirit guides? You know, there are trillions of people who have roamed the earth and have spirit guides. We're human. What is the connection that we as individuals have towards our particular guides? Is it random, or is there some deeper connection that goes beyond this lifetime?
Yeah, I do not think it's random. I do think many people have known their guides in prior lifetimes. I think it's energy. I
Mm,
think it's an energetic vibration, and I think it's, almost beyond my ability to comprehend, but I'll try to put it into words of how I understand it. Take me, for example. I'm incredibly stubborn, I'm very impatient, and I'm very inquisitive. I love to read and I love to research. I like to find everything out. But I am stubborn. And so I have my main guide that I connect with most easily is very stern, very stubborn, very patient, unlike me. But he's very firm. If I had a guide who was, like, super jovial and maybe, like, a surfer, like, attitude, like, "It's okay, we'll figure it out when you figure it out. You're all good, girl," like, that would not be good for me. I need a guide who is very authoritative, very, patient, but also stubbornly persistent. "Samantha, you're gonna learn this lesson, and we're gonna sit here until you do." And that's who my guide, but the main one I said that I work with is his personality. It's a perfect match for me.
mhm,
And so I think that whoever is the grand design of
mhm,
assigning guides to different people, I think it's an energetic match. It has to be, they have to understand our deepest flaws and our deepest abilities and
mhm,
gifts. And then they have to find a guide who's going to be a good match for that. Like when I was teaching English at the college, I think I was a really good teacher, but I don't think I was a great teacher for everyone.
Hmm.
You know, I teach through example and story. And I would get math and science people in there who would be like, "Just show me how to conjugate this verb properly." You know, they didn't want a story that went along with it, but they needed a different teacher they're going to flourish under. I think it's the same with our guides. It's a match of personality and style and energy.
As above, so below. Like when we think of our life, it's just about relationships, and you're looking for someone that matches your vibrational need, or just you're where you're at. And so our vibe attracts our tribe over here and over there, from what you're saying. So
Yeah, but I also believe that we have guides that come and go throughout our lives. And I think that's important too, and I think their energy is different from our main guide, and maybe even from who we are. When I was going through my breast cancer stuff, it's just a lot. It's like a year of going to this doctor, getting this test, waiting for these results. It's just a year of stress, basically,
mm,
right? For me, it was. And I kept having these dreams of this little old woman, and she always had, like, a little knitted shawl on, just exactly who you would conjure up if you wanted a comforting grandmother energy, right? But she was a little bit younger than that, and she was always, like, putting her shawl around me and telling me it was going to be okay. And she told me her name, and she said that she had joined my team just for that period, to be a maternal, motherly presence for me,
mm,
during all of that wait and see with the, different doctor's appointments and procedures. And once I, was given the clear marker, "You're okay," I haven't dreamt of her, I haven't felt her when I meditated. I think she's just moved on to someone else who, is going through something similar.
mm. Much like friends that come into our life, like some last a lifetime, some a season. Same thing over there too, where they
Exactly.
just, you know, they're contracted for sometimes long term, sometimes short term, and then they'll just, gravitate and move to the next situation that they're called to. So I guess the afterlife is not a retirement community. Like, we continue our work. It's not just kind of like no rest for the weary, as they say. We just go on, right?
Yes,
That's
yeah,
it.
I definitely believe that we have jobs over there for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I have your incredible book that I was so blessed to endorse, and I have it right this time. I know I had it upside down, but the back, beautiful cover, published by Hampton Roads, if I'm not mistaken, which I know was the original publisher for, Conversations with God with Neil Donald Walsh, who we've had on a couple of times. But, I loved the book, and I was just honored to endorse it. But for those who haven't yet heard of the book, and it seems like it's really climbing up the, Amazon ladder, and, doing quite well in terms of its reach. Can you tell us a little bit about, because I know you went into a bit throughout our conversation, what's in this particular book? Because I know you've written, other books before, and how did you kind of come into calling this book into action? What was the force behind this book, and what's kind of in it for readers who may be interested in finding their own heavenly alliance? There's Samantha's incredible book that I just loved.
Thank you. Actually, it started during COVID. I was just writing what I thought would be a fiction piece, and I was writing an epistolary novel that was just emails.
Mm,
And Jacob, I had so much fun writing this thing. It was a soul who was getting ready to incarnate to Earth, and she was getting all these emails from HR about how she had to pick a guide, and she had to pick this, and she had to pick her soul purpose, and she was given like 3 choices of parents in one email, and she was like, "I don't like any of those choices." And they were like,
mhm,
"But you have to learn, how to be independent, so you can't have really great parents."
mhm,
There's another email where she finds out that she's gonna have like 2 or 3 husbands, and she's like, "I
mhm,
don't want 2 or 3, I want 1 marriage," and so it was just a fun, like, thing to write about how I view us as souls on the other side when we're getting ready to incarnate, how we pick our parents, we pick our siblings if we need them, we pick our jobs, we pick our potential partners, we pick all of that. And so I wrote it in this form, and I sent it to my agent, and she was like, "First of all, I don't do fiction, and second of all, who wants to read a bunch of emails?"
mm,
I was like, "Okay." I thought it was really fun. I thought it was funny. but I thought, all right, I'll put this into more of a textbook type format. So the first page is Welcome to the University of Earth, because
Mm,
I always think of Earth as a school, and
mhm,
I feel like it's a privilege for us to be here. Many times when I've done readings, I've seen lines of souls
mm,
waiting for the opportunity to come back, which I know is crazy when you think about it because it's not easy here. And
mhm,
yet I do think that this is like the Harvard or Oxford of schools. And I think
mhm,
that when we get accepted here, we really have an opportunity to help our soul to grow. And I think that's the whole purpose of being alive, is to grow our soul. And we do that through triumph, but we also do that through struggle.
mm,
Um, Secondly, I didn't realize this until I finished the book, but I think I wrote it for my dad, because my dad was also raised Catholic, and yet when I was growing up, he taught us about meditation. He taught me how to do yoga starting when I was 6 years old.
mm,
He taught me about past life regressions. He was always reading Sylvia Browne and James Van Praagh and Rosemary Altea and Emmett Fox, and he'd sneak away to the Unity Church once in a while, and then go back to mass on Sunday. So he was constantly in and out of his faith, in and out, in and out, in and out. When things were going well in his life, everything was going well with his faith. When
mhm,
things were not going well in his life, he turned his back on all of it. And it always, kinda confused me as a kid, and it kinda bothered me. For some reason, I've always had an unshakable faith. I don't know why, but I have, and I'm very grateful for that. And I spent most of my adulthood trying to tell my dad, like, how beautiful and what I see when I'm able to connect to the other side, and he would always listen. He was always polite and respectful, and, but he would go in and out, in and out. So I wrote this book to help people like him realize why we do go through difficult times, why we do want so badly for this one dream to come true and it never, never will for us.
mhm,
I wanted to highlight how we are our own worst enemy and our own best cheerleader. And so the book is written in two parts. The first part is about how to recognize and connect with and have a deeper relationship with your guides, your angels, and your loved ones on the other side. And then the second part of the book is really how to know you and how to understand what's blocking you from manifesting the life that you want to block,
mm,
that you want to create. Because I think that we have these subconscious blocks that most of us aren't even aware of, you know? Like we think, "Oh, I want this." But
mm,
do you want that? Do you want it for yourself? Do you want it because your parents told you you should be that thing? Do you want it because it's gonna provide a good paycheck? Do you
mhm,
really want that? Like, maybe you're not manifesting it because you don't even want it. Or maybe you're not manifesting it because you have this subconscious block that says, "I'm not worthy of that. Who the hell am I to
mhm.
think I can achieve this?" So I have a lot of, stories, but also a lot of exercises in there and some to help you really understand who you are and what your real fears are. I think our fears are our best friends. I really do. I think our
Mhm,
fears are mirrors that are reflecting back to us who we are, the illusion of who we think we are, and what's holding us back.
Wow. I love that your book really hits on so many different aspects of the human and spiritual experience, where it takes an empowered approach to help people to process and navigate through their barriers, as well as an expanded, angle where it helps people to connect to the upper ethericals, but also not ignoring, the stuff that might be difficult or the dirty work or the essential work, of being human and being empowered. And so it seems like you are also able to use your own personal trajectory and other examples in your life to have a reference point to, have this message the way that it is. It wouldn't be this way without all these examples and experiences. And it seemed like a lot of that influenced your insight and influenced your passion to give over an alternative outlook and opportunity for people to progress, their lives here on this planet. And so, like we said before, like not everything that we see is bad as bad. Sometimes it could be a great illustration of doing things differently or a great catapult of our own growth. And it seems like you've been able to do that to a perfect T.
Well, thank you. I hope so. What's the old adage? Every prayer is answered, but sometimes the answer is yes, no, and not now.
Mm,
And I think when people get a no or a not now, they tend to lose their faith.
mhm,
Again, not necessarily in a higher power or in this world, but in themselves.
mm,
And so I'm hoping that this book helps people reframe the way they look at their life story, the way they look at themselves, and the way they look at their potential. Because
mm,
usually if we are trying to manifest a goal or a dream in our lives, usually the answer isn't no. Usually it's just not now.
mhm,
There's some work that needs to be done, before you actually get there.
mhm,
I have a chart in the book that helps you identify like hidden fears that
mhm,
can pop up for a goal that you've been trying to manifest.
mhm,
And it can be really instructive to look at that and think, "Oh, that's why I haven't
mhm,
manifested that goal." And I think when we are really honest with ourselves, we can see that we are usually the problem,
mm,
right? It's not necessarily circumstances or people around us, it's usually us.
mm,
Um, I was, single and not dating for 7 years after my divorce,
mm,
and I didn't want to date. I wanted to focus on my children,
mhm,
I wanted to focus on my work, and I wanted to heal from I think a divorce is a minor death, and I wanted to give space and time for that. And I had a lot of pressure from friends, "Get out there, get out there, get out there." And so I tried about, I don't know, 5 years after the divorce, I did a few tentative little, let people set me up on a few things, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm just not ready." And then I decided to just manifest it, I was like, "Okay, I'm going to manifest this." And I'm really big into crystals, so I made myself, rose quartz bracelets that
mm,
I'm actually ironically wearing today.
mm,
I made myself rose quartz bracelets with the heart, and I charged them up, and I asked them to help heal and clear any blocks in my life to manifesting love. I wrote down a list. I'm a big fan of writing a list. My new love is, and just wrote down all the qualifications that I wanted in a potential partner. And I met my fiancé within 6 months of starting the goal book, the list, and the bracelets. To I think it's important if you're working on a goal to have a subliminal, subconscious reminder of that goal throughout your
mhm,
day. That's why I'm a big fan of, like, a bracelet or even tying a rubber band or a string around your wrist so that you have a reminder of, "Oh, yeah, I'm manifesting this."
mhm,
And when he and I look back on how we met, it was you could see the destiny moments in there of how we were just being pushed together. We kept bumping into each other. It was really weird. I
mm,
mean, at all sorts of different places around town. We just kept being put together. But if I had been trying to manifest that goal, that dream of finding true love 1 year, 2 years post my divorce, it never would have happened because I
mm,
wasn't ready. And
right.
because I'm so I think what if I'm not I don't mean to pat myself on the back, but one thing I know I'm good at is being brutally honest with myself.
Mhm,
And I knew I wasn't ready. I knew I just wanted to focus on my 3 amazing children and nothing else. But I see people have these big goals and dreams, and they don't achieve them. And it's not no, it's not that the universe is turning its back on you. It's just that you gotta be honest with yourself, and right now is not the right time for that. So
mhm.
I almost wanna change that old adage of every prayer is answered, it's just yes, no, or not now to, for most things, it's yes or not now.
Timing is everything, right?
Yeah.
So
Mm.
um, I fully agree. And yeah, I mean, I think you're making a great point that it's good to ask, but you have to be clear as to why you want this. Like, just really digging deeper. And I think for you, you're very crystal clear in yourself, and that leads to magnetizing, if that's even a word, those things that you want. And I think really that's how we could partner with the universe in a good way. Is we have to be very clear and honest. It can't be fake. It can't be a politician with you have to be very authentic. And it just, there's no like fake or phoniness. It's a real organic, raw attraction that we connect to. So I love that illustration. Well, certainly, Samantha, we covered, a lot of ground from your own personal journey to your work, to your books, to a lot of, higher insights, with crystal clarity today that I know is going to empower a lot of viewers. I'm just wondering, is there any other point of reference or message or things that is coming to you maybe on a intuitive basis for, viewers during this time? I mean, we're going to be taping this. It's going to be released right before, the election, the new year. There's a lot of energy happening, globally and locally. And I'm just wondering, anything that's coming to you to kind of speak to generate the hope and the faith past some of the uncertainty that people may be facing these days.
Yeah, I think that we need to focus on ourselves and our heart and our truth and
Mhm,
where we are, and let the world do what the world's going to do. We have to focus on where we live in the world and light up that
mhm,
small corner of the world. I had a listener email me just last week, and she said, "I keep trying to manifest the life of my dreams and it's not happening."
mm,
And I said to her, "You can't manifest the life of your dreams in like 1 year, right? You've got to start with 1, 2, or 3 goals." So I would ask everyone listening right now to really think about this question. If you could have one thing, if you could change one thing, if you could manifest one thing before the end of 2025, so not in the next 3 months, let's just
mhm,
say a little bit over a year, what would that be? And how does it make you feel to think about having that one thing, creating, manifesting, building, growing that one thing?
mhm,
And if it makes you feel excited, that's your answer. That's how you're going to light up your corner of the world. And that's what you need to focus on for the next year or 10 years or whatever it's going to take. But persistence is the key. Believing in yourself is the key. And knowing that every single person is here for a reason and a purpose. And it's
mhm,
our job to just find that and fulfill it and lean into it. And it's does sound easy, but it's not. It's a tricky balance of surrender and action. So we
mhm.
have to surrender to what our higher power is telling us we're here to do, and then we have to take action on what we need to do to get there. We've got to meet our guides and angels halfway. We
Right. It's
can't just
not,
ask
yeah.
for help and sit there and that old joke where the guy goes to church every day and prays to win the lottery, and he never does, and he gets to heaven and he's like, "God, I asked for one thing my whole life," and God goes, "You didn't buy a lottery ticket."
Right. It's a halfway thing where you have to ask it and have the right foundations, but also, yeah, Rapunzel's not gonna be coming with her hair down whatever you have to go out if you want your partner, if you want that job, you have to go out and do it. But yes, the right foundations need to be set in place. And I love that. And especially these times, people need to remember that, yeah, I mean, could certain things of the world change the macrocosm? Sure. But I think people need to understand that we can't give our power over to the world outside of us. We have to start connecting to the power within and being our own rulers of our life instead of giving that over to just one person. It's very disempowering, and it's led to a lot of instability. When one thing sways your way, you're good. When it doesn't sway your way, it's not good. So,
Yeah,
uh,
that division is so hard for me to see, and it's one reason why I love to study history. Think about the world when we were in the throes of the bubonic plague and 30% of Europe died. Can you imagine what they thought about their potential and their future? They probably thought the world was ending. Or think about someone who was alive in the 1920s and had to endure World War One, the Great Depression, World War Two. I mean, they must have thought, "This is awful." We've been through terrible things before,
mhm,
and we always we are I just think humans are just absolutely amazing and resilient creatures who, at the end of the day, are filled with love and goodness. We
mhm,
can't always see it, but it's there. It's always there, and we always rebound from these things. And collectively as a whole, we're going to be fine. What
mhm.
we need to do is focus on how we can be a light worker for ourselves and the people around us.
Love it. Thinking globally by acting locally, as they say. So yeah, Samantha, yep, thank you so much for your time. This was a wonderful, conversation. Obviously, welcome back at any moment in time. Just for viewers who want to get in touch with you, who may be interested in a reading or want to follow your social medias, which we'll put, in the descriptions, like where's the best place to follow you, and any cool events coming your way, or webinars, or things that
Yeah.
people could follow up on?
Happy to do that. I'm not doing readings right now. I'm focusing on just writing and teaching, which is my true passion, but I hope to get back to readings at some point in a couple of years. I'm at samanthafay.com. I have a webinar coming up in November on working with crystals, and that is my I love talking about crystals. I absolutely am passionate about teaching people how to work with these beautiful friends of the earth. So that's in November. It's going to be taught online. In January, I'll be at the Edgar Casey ARE in Virginia Beach talking about how to manifest with your guides and angels. And you can attend in person or on Zoom. So would love to meet people there. In April, I'm going to be in Charlotte with George Norrie doing his live meet and greet, and I'm going to be interpreting people's dreams questions live. So I'm really looking forward to that. But all of that is samanthafay.com. You can follow me on Instagram, Samantha O. Fay. And I just love being on your show. I really do respect the work you're doing, Jacob. And I just always like being in your presence. You have such a wise energy for someone so young.
Well, thank you so much, and your family here on the show, and welcome back anytime. And I strongly encourage my viewers to check out all of your work. Yeah, it's just funny. I am going to be at the ARE maybe a month or two. I'm going to be there in May, so we'll eventually find a way to meet in person. But I strongly encourage
I
viewers.
saw I saw on social you said you're trying to go to Ireland for an event. I wanted to come and, "Jacob, take me. I'll present on anything. Crystals, angels."
Yeah, yeah, a lot of stuff is in the works, but,
That's awesome.
I'm very proud of your work, and obviously also recommend my viewers checking out Heavenly Alliance. I've endorsed it, great book, it's on Amazon, and it's doing quite well, so do check that out. So, Samantha Fay, thank you so much for your wonderful words, just loved every moment of it, and please don't be a stranger, and, come back whenever you can, okay?
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for tuning in to an incredibly powerful interview with Samantha Fay. I loved every moment and I learned so much, as I know so many of you will and have from this conversation. So please make sure to check out Samantha's work, as well as continuing to keep in touch within my work. And you could also listen to the Wisdom Jacob's Ladder and follow us on mindbodyspirit.fm, where you can get audio syndicated podcasts as well. Jacob Cooper signing off, and thank you for tuning into a wonderful conversation with the lovely Samantha Fay.